Due to restructuring, your position is being eliminated. Serena Vance, the chief financial officer, announced it with the detached precision of a surgeon delivering a grim diagnosis. Her voice was flat, devoid of any warmth, and she didn't even bother to glance up from her sleek tablet. 19 years. 19 years with Aegis Industries. And this was my send-off. A sterile conference room on the 27th floor of our gleaming Chicago headquarters. Security waiting outside the door like silent, grim-faced pallbearers. My name is Hans Greer. I was 34 years old, the senior financial controller at what used to be a manufacturing powerhouse, a bastion of American industrial quality and integrity, before the venture capital vultures from the Phoenix Group had swooped in and picked it clean. I dedicated nearly 2 decades of my life to Aegis. I'd started as a wide-eyed intern right out of business school, captivated by the vision of Elias Thorne, the company's legendary founder. Elias was a titan of industry, a man who believed in integrity as much as innovation. He taught me everything, from the minutiae of a balance sheet to the broader philosophy of ethical business. Numbers don't lie, Hans, he'd tell me, his hand resting on my shoulder, his gaze steady and wise. People do. Your job is to make sure our numbers always tell the truth, no matter how uncomfortable that truth might be. His words echoed in my mind now, a distant, comforting whisper against the cold, hard reality of my termination. They felt like a forgotten creed in a world that had abandoned its principles. We'll need your key card and parking pass. Marcus Thorne, Elias's ambitious but misguided nephew, added, sliding a flimsy cardboard box across the polished table. He was the newly appointed Chief Operations Officer, a position he secured not through merit or experience, but through aggressive, unsettling loyalty to Serena. He was her shadow, her enforcer, a man whose ambition had clearly eclipsed his ethics. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. I nodded once, didn't argue, didn't plead. I just watched Serena's perfectly manicured fingers tap impatiently on the glass tabletop. Her polished nails, a stark, almost predatory red, seemed to mock the blood that drained from my face, a grim counterpoint to the quiet devastation unfolding within me. Is there anything you'd like to say, Hans? Her tone was sharp, edged with a barely concealed triumph, laced with an expectation of tears or anger, something, anything, to make her feel better about the brutal act they were committing. She wanted to see me break. No, I replied, my voice steady, though my heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a drumbeat of suppressed fury. Thank you for the opportunity. I stood, my movements deliberate, and straightened my tie, an unconscious, nervous habit, a last vestige of the professional composure I'd cultivated for so long. I tucked my worn, leather portfolio under my arm. My wife Sarah had given it to me when I was first promoted to senior controller. She used to say it was my armor against dishonesty. She was gone now, a victim of a sudden, brutal illness 5 years ago, leaving a void in my life I'd tried to fill with spreadsheets and quarterly reports, trying to keep from drowning in the profound, aching silence of our empty house. Even now, the memory of her laughter, her unwavering belief in my integrity, was a bittersweet comfort. Human Resources will contact you about your retirement package, Marcus added, his emphasis on retirement feeling deliberately cruel. He knew, just as I knew, that I was 5 years short of full benefits. This wasn't just a termination. It was a calculated move, designed to hurt, to cripple, to silence me, ensuring I couldn't afford to make trouble. The security guard, Mike, a kind-faced man with tired eyes, looked genuinely embarrassed as he followed me down the long, silent corridor to my office. The fluorescent lights hummed, casting a sterile glow on the once bustling hallway, now eerily quiet. Sorry about this, Mr. Greer, he whispered, his voice low, almost apologetic. He had seen countless employees walk this same path, their careers ending not with a bang, but a whimper. Not your doing, Mike, I replied, my gaze fixed on the small framed photograph on my desk, Sarah's radiant smile, captured forever in a moment of pure joy. I carefully wrapped her picture in tissue paper, a small, private ritual of protection against the harsh reality unfolding around me. I placed my keycard on the desk, a symbol of access now meaningless, but I kept the leather portfolio close, clutched tight in my hand. Inside, a secret weapon, a small encrypted flash drive holding 3 years of meticulous documentation, every irregular vendor payment, every suspicious wire transfer, Every mysteriously canceled internal audit. Every piece of the puzzle I'd been quietly assembling. I walked through the lobby, past coworkers who suddenly found their shoes fascinating, their gazes averted, their silence a chorus of complicity. 19 years of shared projects, late-night deadlines, and muttered complaints over stale coffee, reduced to a cardboard box and averted eyes. Their cowardice stung, but I understood it. Fear was a powerful motivator, and Serena and Marcus wielded it like a weapon. Only as I reached my car, parked in my usual spot beneath a towering oak tree, did I allow myself one small, tight smile, a grim, victorious twist of the lips. They thought I was leaving with nothing. They believed they had extinguished my light, but I was leaving with everything they didn't want found, and I intended to use it. I hadn't always been suspicious by nature. The first decade and a half at Aegis had been golden years, a period of genuine growth and shared purpose. I joined right out of college, eager to learn, enthusiastic about the meticulous, logical world of numbers. The company was still family-owned then, run by old Elias Thorne himself, a man who believed in sweat, equity, and honest dealings. He'd walk the factory floor every morning, shaking hands with the machinists, checking production quality before he'd even have his first cup of coffee. "Numbers don't lie, Hans," he used to tell me, his hand resting on my shoulder, his eyes twinkling with a deep, knowing wisdom. "People do. Your job is to make sure our numbers tell the truth." I lived by that mantra, striving for unwavering accuracy, a steadfast adherence to ethical practice in every report, every ledger. After Elias retired due to a lingering illness, a quiet departure, not the grand celebratory exit he deserved, his son, a charismatic but ultimately weak and easily swayed man, sold Aegis to a consortium of venture capital investors from New York, the Phoenix Group. Things changed slowly at first, insidiously. Small corners cut in production, cheaper, lower-grade materials sourced from questionable suppliers, longer intervals between essential equipment maintenance, risking worker safety, nothing dramatic enough to raise immediate alarms for those not looking closely. Then came the aggressive rebranding, the glossy new marketing campaigns, Aegis reimagined, a new era of excellence, new leadership, new vision, a vision, I was beginning to suspect, built on a foundation of sand. Serena Vance arrived from a multinational conglomerate known for its aggressive growth strategies and even more aggressive accounting practices. She exuded an aura of cool competence, but beneath it, I sensed a ruthless ambition. Marcus, Elias's nephew, had been a mid-level manager, seemingly unremarkable, until Serena promoted him to COO a mere 6 months after her arrival, showering him with praise and responsibilities far beyond his limited experience. He became her loyal soldier, her unquestioning enforcer, his personal loyalty apparently prioritized over any professional ethics. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. Change was inevitable, I reasoned. Progress, even. But soon, the cracks began to show, widening with each passing quarter. At the first quarterly review under the new management, I'd pointed out, these vendor payments don't match our received inventory. We're showing discrepancies of nearly $500,000 for the last fiscal period alone. Serena had smiled, a chilling, all-teeth display, her eyes cold and unyielding. "We're transitioning suppliers, Hans. It'll balance out in the next cycle." It didn't. The discrepancies grew. But my follow-up emails went unanswered, buried under an avalanche of administrative priorities. Then came the executive retreats to exclusive, high-end resorts, Aspen, Monaco, the Caribbean, with nebulous consulting fees paid to shell companies I couldn't find legitimate registration records for, expense reports with duplicated charges, always approved without question. That's when the nagging feeling in my gut solidified into a cold, hard certainty. That's when I started keeping notes, meticulously recording everything. I created a second set of books, the real ones, the ones that told the uncomfortable truth and backed everything up off-site, on a secure cloud server and encrypted flash drives. Not because I planned to expose them at first, just because Elias's voice kept echoing in my head. Numbers don't lie, and I refused to let my numbers lie. Meanwhile, the workplace culture changed dramatically. Younger employees with direct connections to Serena or Marcus got promoted rapidly, leapfrogging over seasoned veterans who had given decades to Aegis. Longtime staff members found themselves suddenly reassigned to dead-end projects or subtly pushed toward early retirement, their institutional knowledge dismissed as antiquated. David from purchasing, a good friend and an old-school professional who valued transparency, stopped by my office one afternoon, his face pale with concern. "Something's not right, Hans," he'd whispered, his voice barely audible. "I'm seeing alarming invoice discrepancies, and when I asked about them, Marcus told me to let it go, said it wasn't my concern." 2 weeks later, David was gone. Performance issues, the official announcement read. I knew better. David was too good at his job, too honest. My best friend Liam, an investigative journalist for the Chicago Chronicle, noticed the change in me. The dark circles under my eyes, the constant tension in my shoulders. "You're working late every night, Hans. You're never home. What's going on?" I couldn't bring myself to tell him everything then. Liam was deeply principled, a relentless pursuer of truth, and I knew if he knew the full extent of what I suspected, he'd go after Aegis like a heat-seeking missile, potentially putting both our careers and my fragile investigation at risk. "Just busy season," I lied, my voice strained, trying to sound convincing. But last month, when Marcus reorganized the finance department, placing his inexperienced nephew, a fresh college graduate with no real-world experience, directly between me and all executive financial approvals, I knew my time was running short. It was a deliberate, cynical move to isolate me, to cut off my direct access to the real numbers, to blind me to their machinations. So, I intensified my efforts. I spent my last few weeks at Aegis meticulously gathering final copies, securing every last shred of evidence, and creating a detailed timeline of every questionable transaction, every policy change that removed financial safeguards. Not because I wanted revenge, not yet. Because someone needed to remember what Elias had taught us. Numbers don't lie. And the truth, no matter how ugly, needed to be told. The full crushing reality of my situation hit me as I pulled into my driveway that afternoon. The silence of my quiet suburban street felt unnaturally heavy. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, I had nowhere to be tomorrow morning. No complex spreadsheets to review, no challenging month-end close to prepare for, no internal audit reports to scrutinize. My identity, so intertwined with my role at Aegis, felt suddenly fractured. I sat in my car for a long time, the engine humming softly, just staring at my front door, as if it held the answers to a future I could no longer envision. My house felt different, emptier somehow, though nothing had changed inside its familiar walls. I walked inside, the silence amplifying the erratic thumping in my chest. I placed the cardboard box on the kitchen counter, its meager contents, a few personal photos, a coffee mug, a sad-looking desk plant, mocking my 19 years of unwavering dedication. I poured myself 2 fingers of the expensive single malt whiskey I kept for truly special occasions. This qualified, I supposed, though not in the way I'd ever imagined my career ending. The phone rang, its sudden jingle piercing the quiet. It was Liam. "Hans, Tina from accounting just called me, sounding frantic. She said you were let go. What the hell happened?" I gave him the sanitized version. "Restructuring. Position eliminated. Standard corporate speak. You know the drill." "That's bull." Liam's voice was sharp, laced with righteous indignation, his journalistic instincts flaring to life. "They can't do that after 19 years without cause. This is a clear case of wrongful termination. We should file a lawsuit immediately. I know a great labor lawyer." "No." I cut him off gently, my voice firm despite the tremor in my hand. "No lawsuits, Liam. Not yet, anyway." I took a slow sip of whiskey, the amber liquid burning a path down my throat, a welcome warmth against the cold dread. "Trust me on this, Liam. Some battles aren't fought in courtrooms. Not initially, anyway." After we hung up, I went to my home office and powered up my computer. The encrypted flash drive from my portfolio, now plugged into a secure port, contained everything, neatly organized by date, incident type, and dollar amount. 3 years of financial manipulation, meticulously cataloged with supporting evidence. Emails, internal memos, scanned invoices, detailed notes. I opened a new document and began typing. Not an angry letter, not a direct threat, just a clear, factual summary of what I'd observed, what I'd documented, the undeniable pattern of misconduct. The email addresses for the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, the FBI's white-collar crime division, and the state attorney's office waited, already pre-filled in the recipient field. My finger hovered over the send button. Was I really going to do this? These weren't just spreadsheet errors or honest accounting mistakes. This was deliberate financial misconduct, a widespread pattern of fraud. People would lose jobs, maybe face criminal charges. The company Elias built, the company I'd poured my life into, could collapse under the weight of its own corruption. I closed the laptop without sending anything. A profound sense of loneliness settled over me. Instead, I found myself pulling out a dusty photo album from a bottom drawer. Pictures of Elias Thorne's retirement party, a bittersweet memory. The old team, faces bright with hope and genuine camaraderie. Sarah, standing beside me at the company picnic, both of us younger, unaware of the insidious illness already growing inside her, the one that would steal her from me far too soon. "What would you do, Sarah?" I whispered to her smiling photograph, my voice raspy with emotion. I already knew the answer. Sarah never tolerated dishonesty, never wavered from her moral compass. "Do what's right, Hans," she would have said, her voice clear and unwavering. "Everything else is just noise." I slept poorly that night, if at all. My dreams were a disjointed collage of spreadsheets, whispering voices, and the cold, unblinking eyes of Serena Vance. By morning, something had fundamentally shifted inside me. The thick fog of shock and grief had finally cleared, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This wasn't about my job anymore. It wasn't even about me. It was about Elias's legacy, tarnished by greed. It was about the honest vendors being systematically cheated. It was about the hundreds of loyal employees, the machine operators and warehouse staff who'd put in decades of service, whose pensions were being drained away. And now about defective parts potentially endangering lives. I made coffee, the rich aroma, a grounding presence in the quiet kitchen. I straightened my tie, out of 19 years of ingrained habit, a silent salute to the man I used to be, the man I still intended to be. Then I picked up the phone. "Agent Reynolds, it's Hans Greer. I need to talk to you about some significant financial irregularities at Aegis Industries. Yes, it's extensive. I have documentation. Can we meet today?" Agent Michael Reynolds had been my roommate in college, a quiet, focused guy who had always possessed an unwavering sense of justice. Now, he was a rising star federal prosecutor specializing in white-collar crime. The first move had been made. The game, it seemed, was finally on. 3 days after my initial clandestine meeting with Agent Reynolds, I received a certified letter from Aegis's formidable legal department. The severance package they'd generously prepared, a meager offering of 3 months' salary for 19 years of unwavering service, now included a bewilderingly extensive confidentiality agreement. It was 12 pages of dense legal jargon, specifically designed to prevent me from discussing any aspect of company operations, past, present, or future, with anyone under penalty of severe financial repercussions. It was, quite simply, a gag order. I immediately called Liam, my journalist friend, for legal advice. "They're definitely worried about something," Liam said, his voice grim, after reviewing the document over a secure video call. "This goes way beyond standard non-disclosure terms. It's almost a complete gag order. They're terrified of what you know." "What happens if I don't sign?" I asked, my gaze fixed on the ominous document. "They're threatening to contest your unemployment benefits, which would financially cripple you and withhold payment for all unused vacation time and accrued sick leave," he explained, his voice hardening with professional indignation. "Legally, it's shaky ground for them, especially the unemployment part, but they're betting you won't have the resources or the stomach to fight it in court." I thanked him, promising to think it over. What I couldn't tell him, was that I'd already decided. The agreement was a clear admission of guilt, a desperate attempt to bury their secrets. Later that afternoon, a sleek black car pulled into my driveway. To my surprise, Serena Vance herself stepped out. She stood on my porch, an unsettlingly polite smile plastered on her face, like a venomous snake charming its prey. "Hans," she said warmly, her voice a practiced purr, as if we were old, dear friends catching up. "May I come in? I was in the neighborhood and wanted to personally check how you're doing after the restructuring." I led her into my living room, the familiar space suddenly feeling tainted by her presence, but didn't offer refreshments. I just watched her, my guard up, my senses heightened. About the severance paperwork, she began, her tone conciliatory, placing a fresh copy of the daunting document on my coffee table. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. We can offer an additional 2 months' salary as a sign of our continued appreciation for your service if you sign today, and we'll fast-track your unemployment. What's the rush, Serena? I asked, my voice flat, carefully neutral, my pulse quickening, but my expression carefully blank. I needed to gauge her desperation. Her smile tightened, revealing the faintest flicker of impatience. The board is finalizing next quarter's budget. We simply need to close out all pending financial obligations, like properly paying vendors and former employees, to present a clean balance sheet. The words slipped out before I could stop them. A calculated risk. I'm not sure what you mean. The Westbrook invoices? Something minuscule, almost imperceptible, flickered in her eyes. A flash of surprise, quickly masked. The ones that showed up in the system without corresponding inventory receipts? I asked carefully, pushing just a little further, testing the waters. The ones that totaled nearly $500,000 for phantom shipments? Clerical errors, she replied smoothly. Her voice a practiced purr, but the edge was sharper now, a hidden threat, already addressed and reconciled. And the consulting payments to Verdant Partners? I pressed, leaning back slightly in my chair, watching her reaction. The company that shares a virtual office address with Marcus's brother-in-law's personal home office? The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees, the air growing thick with unspoken tension. Serena's smile vanished completely, replaced by an expression of cold, unyielding fury. Her eyes, once merely cold, now burned with a dangerous, almost predatory intensity. Her voice, when she spoke again, had lost all pretense of warmth, becoming a chilling, silken threat. I'd be very careful with accusations, Hans, especially unfounded ones that could be construed as defamatory. Such statements could have serious repercussions, not just for us, but for you. She paused, then added, her gaze piercing. Did you remove any company documents when you left? Because that would constitute theft of proprietary information, a federal offense with very severe penalties. I kept copies of my personal work product, notes, and publicly available reports as permitted in the employee handbook, as is my right. I replied truthfully, meeting her gaze steadily. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my voice remained calm, unwavering. She stood abruptly, her movements sharp, dismissive. I'll give you until tomorrow at noon to reconsider this severance offer. It's a very generous one, Hans. After that, things might become complicated for your future employment prospects, for your entire retirement planning. She turned and left, the silence she left behind more menacing than any shouted threat. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Back off if you know what's good for you. We know about the flash drive. Consider this a warning. The cold dread returned, chilling me to the bone. That evening, I noticed a dark, nondescript sedan parked across the street from my house, its windows tinted, a faint glow emanating from inside. It was still there the next morning. And the next night, by afternoon, my bank called. Someone had attempted to access my account using my social security number but incorrect passwords. When I checked my personal email, dozens of subscription confirmations flooded my inbox, services I'd never signed up for, from obscure magazine subscriptions to online gaming memberships, all requiring immediate payment or cancellation. It was clear they were sending a message they could make my life difficult. They could harass me. They could destroy my credit, overwhelm me with administrative burdens. They could watch my house, a constant, unnerving reminder of their reach. I called Agent Reynolds again, relaying every new development. They're pushing back, I told him, my voice tight with a mixture of fear and determination. Hard. They know I have something. Expected, he replied calmly, his voice reassuringly steady, but concerning. It suggests there's more than just sloppy bookkeeping. The attempts to access your accounts, the constant surveillance, the veiled threats, it suggests a deeper level of desperation and, potentially, greater criminality. Forward me everything. The severance offer, the text, the unauthorized access attempts. Document the surveillance with times and dates. Even photos if you can get them without being seen? What about my evidence? I asked, my voice laced with anxiety, the weight of the flash drive feeling impossibly heavy in my pocket. Is it enough to bring them down? His pause told me everything. It was the pause of a seasoned prosecutor weighing his options. It's compelling, Hans, extremely compelling. You've done remarkable work. But corporations like Aegis have battalions of high-priced lawyers who will claim these are isolated incidents, accounting errors, or even that you manufacture the evidence as a disgruntled employee. We need more. Specifically, current financial records. And, ideally, someone on the inside who can testify. I hung up feeling more alone than ever. They were watching me, pressuring me, and I didn't have enough ammunition to fight back. Not yet, anyway. A week after Serena's chilling visit, my old assistant Chloe called me from an untraceable burner phone. Her voice was hushed, nervous, almost a whisper, laced with a barely concealed terror. Can we meet somewhere? Not in public. Not at your house. Somewhere completely off the grid. We arranged to meet at my brother's remote hunting cabin, an hour's drive north of St. Louis, deep in the Ozarks. He was in Florida for the winter. The place would be empty, isolated, and safe. Chloe arrived looking utterly exhausted, her eyes wide and haunted, constantly checking her rearview mirror as she pulled her battered sedan into the gravel driveway. They're doing a full audit, she said without preamble once we were inside, her voice a frantic torrent. But it's not a real audit, Hans. They're actively changing records, backdating approvals, creating phantom paper trails for transactions that never existed, deleting incriminating digital logs. How do you know all this? I asked, my heart pounding with a mixture of dread and grim satisfaction. This was the break we needed. They brought in a team of consultants from Marcus's old accounting firm, she explained, her voice trembling, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. They're using your old credentials to access the system, since your access wasn't fully revoked for a while. What they don't know is that your old login still feeds into a hidden system log that I set up months ago, a little Easter egg I built into the system to track suspicious activity. I've been able to track every change, every deletion, every new entry. They still have me using your old system access, and I used it to access their server. She pulled out a new, pristine flash drive. I've been documenting everything, Hans, the before and after, the original data and their doctored versions. I stared at the tiny device, a universe of incriminating data contained within its plastic shell. Chloe, you're risking everything, your job, your future. They're already planning to eliminate my position next month anyway, her laugh was bitter, hollow. I found that out when they accidentally copied me on a confidential internal restructuring email. They were just keeping me around to help cover their tracks before they cut me loose. So, what do I have to lose? What Chloe showed me, laid out in meticulous detail on her laptop, went far beyond what I'd even suspected. This wasn't just creative accounting or inflated executive perks. This was a systematic, deliberate, and vast criminal enterprise. Aegis had been systematically overcharging government contracts, falsifying certification documents for critical parts that didn't meet safety standards, and recording phantom inventory to inflate company valuation for potential buyers. There's more, Chloe said, her voice dropping to a terrified whisper. She pulled up an email chain, her finger trembling as she scrolled. They're preparing to sell the entire manufacturing division, the factory, the patents, the workforce, to a shadowy private equity group overseas. The employees won't know until it's a done deal, the day they show up to find new management in charge and their benefits gone. The pension fund? My voice was barely a whisper, a cold dread washing over me. Her grim expression confirmed my worst fears. They've been systematically borrowing from it for over a year, diverting funds to cover their illicit activities. If this sale goes through, Hans, there won't be enough left to cover their obligations. Hundreds of families' retirement plans, built over decades of hard work and loyalty, will be completely wiped out. Who else knows about this? I asked, my mind racing, trying to grasp the full scope of their depravity. Just the core executive team. Serena, Marcus, and the CEO. And now you. And someone else, I think. Drew Peterson from Quality Control. He started asking questions last month about discrepancies in the materials testing for the Bentonville contract. He disappeared a week before you did. Officially, he was fired for insubordination, but it fell off. That's the thing, Chloe continued, her voice hushed, her eyes darting to the cabin windows as if fearing unseen listeners. There's no official termination paperwork in the system for Drew. His employee file bizarrely shows he resigned, but his badge was never turned in, and his desk was cleared out overnight. His personal belongings were just gone. A cold, hard knot of fear tightened in my stomach. This wasn't just financial crime anymore. This was something far darker. Have you heard from him? Number. His phone goes straight to voicemail. His wife told me he just left suddenly for a new job opportunity, but she seemed off, scared. On the long, silent drive home, the weight of Chloe's revelations pressed down on me. I couldn't shake the sense that we were dealing with something far more sinister than mere financial fraud. The surveillance car was gone from my street when I returned, but somehow that didn't reassure me. It felt more like a chilling prelude. I called Drew's number again, straight to voicemail, as Chloe had said. I left a vague message about connecting about professional opportunities, just in case he was listening. Then I called Agent Reynolds again, my voice tight with urgency. We need to move faster, Michael, I told him, explaining what Chloe had shared, the magnitude of the pension fund fraud, and the disturbing disappearance of Drew. This changes things dramatically, Hans, he agreed, his usual calm replaced by a distinct urgency. The pension fund angle elevates this investigation significantly. I'll speak with my superiors first thing tomorrow morning. This isn't just a financial crime anymore. It's a matter of national security and potentially even personal safety. But Hans, he paused, his voice grave, almost a warning. Be careful. If they're manipulating records on this scale, and if people are disappearing, they're desperate. And desperate people make dangerous choices. You need to be incredibly vigilant. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Drew, about Elias Thorne, who trusted me to keep his company's finances honest, who would be heartbroken by this betrayal of his legacy, about the hundreds of machine operators and warehouse staff who'd put in decades of service, whose meager retirement savings, their hopes for a secure old age, were being systematically drained away. I kept seeing the faces of their families, their trust exploited. At 2 a.m., my home security system emitted a soft, insistent alert movement in my backyard. My heart leaped into my throat. By the time I reached the window, whoever it was had vanished into the shadows of my backyard. But my home office window, the one I always meticulously locked, was cracked open, just slightly, but enough to notice. Enough to send a shiver of terror down my spine. They weren't just watching anymore, they were sending another message. A chilling, physical one. Nowhere was safe. My home, my sanctuary, had been violated. I didn't wait for them to make another move. By dawn, fueled by a potent cocktail of fear and righteous fury, I was executing a plan I'd been formulating since Chloe's terrifying revelations. First, I moved all my evidence, both my meticulous documentation and Chloe's even more damning files, to 3 separate, secure, and geographically distinct locations. One encrypted set went to Liam, with specific instructions to open it only if something catastrophic happened to me. Another went into a safety deposit box at a bank where Serena's financial tentacles couldn't possibly reach. The third, the most comprehensive set, I encrypted and sent directly to Agent Reynolds via a secure, untraceable server, with a detailed key delivered separately to his personal, secure email. Next, I reached out to David from purchasing, who'd been pushed out months before me for asking too many questions. We met at a quiet, unassuming diner 2 towns over, a place with good coffee and even better anonymity. I've been waiting for this call, Hans, he said grimly, his expression stoic, after I explained the horrifying situation, including Drew's disappearance. I found the same discrepancies, especially with the raw materials invoices and the phantom suppliers. Started asking questions in internal meetings. Next thing I know, I'm being escorted out of the building for violating company policy by digging too deep. Did they threaten you after? I asked, my voice low. Not directly, no, but my home was mysteriously broken into a week later. Nothing valuable was taken, no jewelry or electronics, just my laptop and a few financial files I had kept from work. He leaned forward, his eyes sharp with renewed determination. I filed a police report, documented everything. Never thought it would be useful, but it establishes a pattern of intimidation. They tried to scare me into silence. Would you be willing to make a formal statement to federal authorities about what you found? I finished, holding his gaze. He nodded without hesitation, a flicker of defiance in his eyes. Been feeling like a coward for staying quiet this long. It's time this all came to light. Over the next few days, I discreetly connected with 2 more former Aegis employees with similar, disturbing stories. Each had pieces of the puzzle, departments where numbers mysteriously didn't add up, projects that vanished from tracking systems without explanation, safety concerns that were deliberately buried by executive mandate. Their testimonies, combined with my comprehensive financial evidence, began to form an undeniable mountain of proof against Serena and Marcus. Agent Reynolds called me with significant news. The federal prosecutor's office was officially interested, and they were escalating the investigation to a multi-agency task force. But they needed more, particularly about the pension fund manipulation. We need current financial records, he emphasized. Without them, Aegis's legal team will claim the issues were fixed after you left, or that they were merely isolated historical errors. Chloe was taking an enormous risk just talking to me. Asking her to extract more current documents might put her in real immediate danger. I wrestled with the ethical dilemma, torn between protecting her and serving justice. That's when my phone rang, an unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, my finger hovering over the reject button, but a strange, chilling premonition made me pick up. Hello, Hans. The voice was barely recognizable, strained, a desperate whisper from a dark place. Drew. I stepped outside the small coffee shop where I'd been working, looking around instinctively, my heart pounding in my ears. Drew, where are you? Are you okay? Listen carefully. His words were rushed, frantic, laced with a palpable fear that made my blood run cold. The Bentonville contract, the military vehicles. Check the testing certification documents against the actual test results. They're putting defective parts in military vehicles. Components that are substandard that could fail under pressure. Drew's voice broke, choked with emotion. They threatened my family, Hans. They found out where my kids go to school. Said they'd make sure my kids. I'm leaving town, going dark. But someone needs to stop them before someone gets killed. The line went dead. Military contracts. Defective, substandard parts. Lives on the line. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about human lives, about national security, about a level of callous greed I hadn't imagined possible. I called Agent Reynolds immediately, my voice tight with horror and urgency, relaying Drew's desperate information. His response was immediate, his tone grim. This changes everything, Hans. Every single thing. I'm bringing in the Department of Defense. Can you come to my office now? 3 hours later, I sat in a stark, windowless conference room in the federal building, facing Agent Reynolds and 2 stern-faced DOD investigators. The air crackled with a grim intensity. I laid out everything: the pervasive financial fraud, the intricate document manipulation, the systematic depletion of the pension fund, and now, the horrifying corruption involving the military contract. I detailed how Aegis had put profits before the safety of service members, knowingly supplying faulty components for vehicles used by the U.S. military. We'll need your full and unwavering cooperation, Mr. Greer. One investigator, a man with a military bearing and piercing eyes, said, his voice grave. This investigation will become very visible, very quickly. It will be explosive. We understand your personal safety might be compromised. We can arrange protection, a secure location, anything you need. I shook my head, a new plan forming in my mind, a daring, risky move that could either expose them completely or put me in unimaginable danger. I appreciate the offer, I said, meeting his gaze steadily, but I have a better idea, a way to get them to confess on record. The next morning, acting on my bold proposal, I called Serena directly. My voice, carefully modulated, was submissive, defeated, the tone of a man who had finally broken under pressure. I've been thinking about that severance package, Serena, I said, feigning resignation, the one with the confidentiality agreement. I realize I'm tired of fighting. I'd like to discuss terms and finalize everything. Wise decision, Hans, she replied, poorly concealing her satisfaction. a triumphant smirk audible in her voice. "Come to the office tomorrow, 9 a.m. We'll finalize everything, and rest assured, we will ensure you receive your due as a sign of our goodwill." "Actually," I countered, my voice regaining a hint of its old firmness, "I'd prefer somewhere more neutral. This has been difficult, and I'd rather avoid the office. The Lakeside Hotel. They have private meeting rooms with good privacy. Say, 10 a.m.? She hesitated for a long moment. Then, confident in her perceived victory, her belief that I was finally capitulating, she agreed. What she didn't know, the Lakeside Hotel was already crawling with federal agents. Every private meeting room on the third floor was wired for audio and video recording. Every entrance and exit under discreet surveillance. The trap was meticulously set, and Serena Vance, along with Marcus Thorne, her loyal lieutenant, were walking directly into it. The Lakeside Hotel's Magnolia Room felt unnaturally quiet, the luxurious decor strangely jarring given the gravity of the impending confrontation. Serena, resplendent in a sharp power suit, reviewed the severance paperwork I'd brought. Her attorney, a gaunt man in an absurdly expensive suit, sat stiffly beside her, occasionally whispering terse instructions in her ear, his eyes constantly scanning the room, a picture of nervous vigilance. Marcus Thorne sat opposite me, a smug, expectant look on his face, clearly relishing my apparent surrender. "This all looks in order," Serena finally said, a triumphant gleam in her eye, as she slid the comprehensive non-disclosure agreement across the polished table. Its 12 pages of dense legal language were designed to silence me forever, to bury the truth under a mountain of legalese. "Just sign here, Hans, and we can put this unfortunate situation behind us. We can all move forward." Beside it sat the severance check, 5 months' salary for 19 years of service, a pittance for the moral compromise they demanded. I reached for a pen, my hand steady, then paused, my gaze sweeping across their expectant faces, lingering on Marcus's smug grin. "Before I sign, I'd like to clarify something just to ensure there are no ambiguities later. This agreement covers all company matters, correct? Every aspect of Aegis Industries' operations, past and present." My voice was calm, almost conversational, masking the furious thumping of my heart, including, for instance, the recent pension fund irregularities and the discrepancies in the Bentonville military contract. The attorney stiffened, his eyes narrowing instantly. Marcus's smug expression dissolved, replaced by a sudden stark pallor. Serena's smile faltered, her perfect composure cracking for just a moment, her eyes darting nervously between the documents, Marcus, and my face. A ripple of unease, of dawning fear, spread through them. "All company matters," she confirmed smoothly, forcing a semblance of control. Her voice now a little too tight, a little too strained. "Standard language. Why do you ask?" I nodded slowly, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. I reached for the pen again, then paused, letting the silence stretch, letting their anxiety mount. "One more question," I said, standing slowly, deliberately, my gaze unwavering as I met Serena's terrified eyes. Does this particular non-disclosure agreement cover my obligation to report federal crimes I've witnessed, especially those involving the manipulation of government contracts and the endangering of military personnel?" "What are you implying, Mr. Greer?" the attorney snarled, finally losing his composure, lunging forward in his seat. "I'm not implying anything," I said, my voice cutting through the sudden tension in the room, clear and resonant. "I'm stating that I've already provided overwhelming evidence of fraud, embezzlement, pension fund manipulation, and criminal endangerment to federal authorities. And that includes our entire conversation right now, here in this room, which is being recorded, every word, every gesture." The conference room door burst open with a resounding bang. Agent Reynolds walked in, his face grim, flanked by a squad of stern-faced FBI agents and the 2 unsmiling DOD investigators. "Serena Vance," one agent said, his voice crisp and authoritative. "Marcus Thorne. We have federal warrants to search all Aegis Industries facilities and seize all financial records related to government contracts and the company's pension fund. You are both under arrest." Her face drained of all color, going ashen, then chalk white. Marcus slumped in his chair, his jaw slack. Agent Reynolds walked directly to the table and placed a thick, heavy folder on its polished surface. It was my evidence, our evidence. This is just a fraction of what we have, he said quietly, his gaze sweeping over the now terrified faces of Serena and Marcus. The rest is being presented to a federal grand jury as we speak. Serena lunged for her phone, but an agent gently but firmly intercepted her hand, securing the device. The CEO, along with several keyboard members, are being detained for questioning simultaneously at corporate headquarters. Agent Reynolds explained, his voice echoing in the now utterly silent room, the finality of his words hanging heavy in the air. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say. I didn't stay to watch them lead Serena and Marcus away, their faces a mixture of shock, fury, and utter despair. My part was done. The truth, finally, had prevailed. 6 months after the dramatic arrest at the Lakeside Hotel, I stood in the heart of the old Aegis manufacturing facility, watching workers on the assembly line. The machines hummed with the same familiar rhythm they had for decades. A comforting thrum of productivity, but everything else had fundamentally changed. The company had been placed in receivership during the tumultuous investigation. When the dust finally settled, after the criminal charges were filed and the full extent of the fraud laid bare, a remarkable thing happened. A coalition of dedicated, long-term employees, led by a former plant manager, had managed to purchase the manufacturing division with help from a state economic development fund and a surprisingly generous anonymous donation from Elias Thorne's family foundation. They'd renamed it Thorne Legacy Manufacturing, a poignant, powerful tribute to Elias and his unwavering vision of integrity. They'd asked me to help them set up the new financial systems, proper ones, with transparency, accountability, and ethical safeguards built into every single level of operation. It was a chance to rebuild, to create something genuinely good from the ashes of corruption. All done for the day, Mr. Greer? Mike, the security guard who'd once reluctantly escorted me out the door, now nodded respectfully as I signed out at the front desk, his eyes alight with genuine admiration. Just about, Mike, I replied, handing him back my temporary visitor badge. Outside, Liam waited in his car, a knowing smile on his face. He had broken the story, and his articles had been instrumental in exposing the fraud to the public. How's it looking in there, Hans? He asked as I settled into the passenger seat, the smell of freshly cut metal and honest labor clinging to my clothes. Good, really good. They've got a solid team, Mike. They'll be fine without me checking over their shoulders. I glanced back at the sprawling brick building, the setting sun glinting off its windows. Elias would be proud. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, the hum of the engine a soothing backdrop to my thoughts. The news had covered the story extensively. For weeks, executives arrested, charges filed, intricate plea deals negotiated. The pension funds had been partially recovered. Not everything, but enough that most retirees wouldn't lose their homes or face destitution. Serena Vance and Marcus Thorne were awaiting their respective trials, facing decades in prison. The CEO, in a desperate bid to save himself, had turned state's evidence, exposing even more layers of deceit. The story had faded from the relentless 24/7 news cycle, replaced by newer, equally sensational scandals, but its impact resonated deeply for those who had lived through it. Any regrets? Liam asked, his voice soft, as we pulled up to my now quiet house. I thought about the question carefully, letting the weight of the past few months settle around me. The fear, the anger, the profound sense of betrayal. And then, the fierce determination, the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had done the right thing. No, I finally answered, shaking my head. I didn't do it for revenge. Not really. I did it because it was right. Because Elias's principles deserved to be honored. Because those numbers ultimately needed to tell the truth. That evening, I meticulously packed away my files on the Aegis, placing them in a secure, fireproof safe. The entire story was documented, preserved, every damning detail, every heroic act of ordinary people, but I no longer needed to carry it with me, a heavy burden on my conscience. Tomorrow, I was starting a new chapter. I was beginning as a part-time financial ethics consultant for a national manufacturing association, helping other companies set up robust financial systems, implement whistleblowing protections, and foster cultures of transparency. My role would be to make it harder for the Serenas and Marcuses of the world to manipulate the books, to steal from employees, to endanger lives. Not a bad final chapter for a 34-year-old financial controller who just wanted the numbers to tell the truth. I had faced opposition that seemed designed not just to end my career, but to destroy my very sense of what was right, to silence the voice of integrity within me. I fought back, not with anger or personal retaliation, but by relentlessly pursuing the truth and bringing it to light. In doing so, I discovered that true success isn't just about personal triumph or financial gain. It's about upholding the integrity that truly defines us, even when others try to erase it. It's about standing firm in your convictions, even when the world seems to conspire against you. Remember that sometimes, the very people who try to tear you down, who seek to bury you under their lies, become the catalyst for building something far greater than you ever imagined possible. For me, justice wasn't just served. It became the foundation for a new purpose, a new path, and a truly meaningful life beyond the numbers.